Hey friends, welcome back to Positive Impact. My guest today, Kimberly Hill. Kimberly is a certified dating and relationship coach and master neuro-linguistic practitioner who supports men to attract and keep healthy, loving relationships. She is the host of the honest and relatable podcast, The Self-Confidence Project, where she talks candidly about the stuff we all face in life and love. And Kimberly, it's an honor to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for the lovely introduction.
And I think it's really importantly, Kimberly, your work is needed now more than ever to support men in the areas of intimacy and relationships. And I think it's so appropriate that we're having this conversation in June, which is Men's Health Awareness Month. So there's one thing I want to explore with you real quick. And it's something that this fascination that we have with society celebrating a marriage of maybe 50 to 75 years. And I used to think it was something I strive for. And it's something that the more I get to think about it as of late, when the husband gets asked the question, what's the secret to your long loving relationship with your wife? The answer is happy wife, happy life. Or the answer is always yes, dear. And the more I explore it, Kimberly, the more I'm wondering in my own life, is that really success? Because that's somebody who's not standing up for themselves and putting up healthy and strong boundaries.
Yes, I would fully agree with you. A healthy relationship is not defined by one person being fully submissive to the other person. Maybe that works for some people, but certainly not for me and not for the clients and the kind of relationships they're looking for. So I really don't like happy wife, happy life, happy spouse, happy house. Maybe we can throw that out there. But then also we get into like, well, whose responsibility is whose happiness? And I believe that if you want to have a loving, healthy, successful, intimate, long-term relationship, then you better understand how to bring joy, love, and happiness into your own life, because your partner is the person that you get to share that happiness with. They are not there to create your happiness for you. So if we're hearing men say that their secret to a long-term relationship is happy wife, maybe it should be happy wife, I don't get divorced. But it doesn't, how does that speak to the experience that individual or that man has had in that marriage as well? I think if they asked him to go a little deeper into how joyful he felt the relationship is and what he feels he receives from being in that partnership, you might get a bit of a different answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to back up real quick. What was a transformational moment or an aha moment, Kimberly, that happened in your life that catapulted you onto the journey of what you're doing today?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was writing my story for my website a little while ago, and I had to actually get help from a author herself because I found it really difficult to describe in a nice websitey type way my life journey and what has led me here. And I realized that I maybe am somewhat non-traditional in the sense that there wasn't in particular one poignant moment or one big life-changing event that happened to me. Like, I've brought on guests before that had near-death experiences and then their lives have changed, or they experience a death and then their lives changed. But for me, it was like my evolution has been made up of multiple different experiences, like many aha moments along the way. And that's what's actually led me here. If I were to pick out the story highlights to give people a little insight into me, well, sure, maybe one of those moments was experiencing depression when I was younger. I think that transformed the way I viewed things, and that set me on a particular path and journey. But I had, maybe 100 more aha moments after that, such as, taking a leap of faith to go travel as a single girl, or taking a risk to work in a industry and field that I never expected to get into, such as, being in financial derivatives for 9 years. And I think maybe aha moments also happened in many of my relationship experiences and travel experiences and traveling alone and books I've read. So for me, it's just, I have aha moments, I feel like once a month in my life. And I don't know if that makes me lucky or unlucky. But I just feel like my story is still being written, and maybe some of those aha moments are yet to come. That's how I see it anyways.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
In preparing for this podcast, one of the themes that really I want to come back to and has been true in my own life, Kimberly, is, I'm 44 years old, and I'm
Hmm.
just now, for the first time in my life, learning how to be in a healthy, loving, faithful relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
And for a long time, and I know this is a theme that you incorporate with your clients, there there was a truth that there was a truth that I believed, that I was broken and that there was something
Mm,
wrong with me, because it
yeah.
felt like I was incapable of loving a woman in a way that I wanted to, with my heart open and walls down. And I really
Mm.
want to debunk that myth with you today and unpack that together, because I think it's so important.
I agree. I think that, depending on what culture we've been raised in and also what our home life looked like when we were younger, we were raised with a certain set of beliefs around what is a successful relationship versus what's a failed one. And I think men have this tremendous pressure on their shoulders that a successful relationship is simply defined by everything that he can provide to that relationship. And it fails to take into account, well, what is he receiving from that other person as well. So I work with a lot of men that are about 40 plus, that have come out of either a marriage or a significant long-term relationship, that are of the mind that they are a failure, that there was something inherently that they did wrong that caused the demise of that relationship. And it's too much of a burden for us to take the responsibility of the world on our shoulders. So
Mm.
it's a little bit more reflective of, well, okay, what do I need to learn to become a better version of myself? And also, what do I need to have value wise or within a relationship to encourage it to be the best version of itself? So it does take into account the other person as well, because we know that there are people out there that can kind of encourage the better or the worst versions of us. So
Mm.
a little bit of reflection and thinking, hey, maybe I could strive to be a better version of myself. I think that's really important. But being driven by shame and guilt isn't really a good recipe for a successful life for anybody. So I think a little bit of reflection is needed there, for men to understand that, if one relationship didn't work out, it doesn't mean you yourself are inherently a failure. It just means that there's some learning that's still there for you and clearly for that other person too.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say shame, the word shame, I get a visceral reaction when
Hmm.
I hear that word, especially being in recovery. For me, a coping mechanism was the drugs and the alcohol and the pornography for so long. And a
Hmm.
lot of my audience is people who are sober, curious, wanting to level up their sobriety. And I'm just wondering, so many men out there's this loneliness epidemic, and
Yeah.
it seems to be getting worse. And it seems to be this great divide with healthy, masculine, available number of men in regards to how it relates to the number of women. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things that I'm, hearing you say there. And one is, yeah, escapism. Like, first and foremost, if we don't understand how to bring joy and passion and satisfaction into our lives, then we will look to find quick fixes for that. So often, if a man or a woman is looking at pornography, for example, right, you have to ask yourself, what's the intention of viewing that right now? Is it because I feel stress and I need a release and I don't necessarily know how to do that in some other arena or avenue? Or, am I really struggling with my emotions and I'm finding some way to escape those feelings by maybe even disassociating from myself? And so it's like, well, firstly, what's driving the motivation to get into escapism behaviors, such as consuming large amounts of alcohol. I mean, when you're absolutely blasted and wasted, you're not connected to your body at all. So you're escaping yourself and your thoughts and your feelings. And I think, that is an awful epidemic we're seeing with a lot of people where, especially with the advance of technology, with so many avenues to just escape real life. I mean, here comes virtual reality. Like, I'm scared for a lot of people too, because we're going to be we're going to be disconnecting from society and community so much more because we can put on a pair of goggles and, have the experience that we just want to make up for ourselves. So for me, it's like, well, understanding how to cultivate, feeling okay with yourself. And I'm not here to say, we need to be toxically positive all the time or only be seeking positive experiences in our life. But if we want to learn to feel better about ourselves and express our emotions, then I think one of the answers is in community. It's in the bond that we form with other people. And for men in particular, it's probably leaning into things like men's groups or brotherhoods that are
Mm.
healthily set up, because of course there are some that aren't so supportive and maybe have bad intentions. So getting into the right kind of community with other people that can encourage you to express yourself and to find a more healthy outlet for everything that you're feeling. Because one of the things is, like, our feelings shouldn't be something that we're so afraid of that we run from. And if you ask everybody in this world, we're all going to have a different combination of a particular set of emotions that we want to avoid the most ourselves. For me, for most of my life, it was, I want to avoid the feeling of depression because I felt that when I was younger, and I made this kind of unhealthy pact with myself that I would never feel that feeling again. And so I did whatever I needed to do to escape that feeling. And I think if I were to ask you, Andrew, like, what's the feeling or the emotions that you yourself try and avoid the most, you'll have a different answer from me.
Mm.
And it's, so how do we learn to welcome in some of those emotions in a healthy environment and a safe environment so we can actually just have the human experience and not run from it?
Absolutely. And I love how you provided solutions to that question. And what I heard you say, Kimberly, is the importance of a men's group or a brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's why the work that I do with men, it's so important, because men are trying to lone wolf it, do
Yep.
everything on their own, not
Mm-hmm.
asking for help,
Yep.
and pretending everything's okay. And deep
Yep.
down, they're killing themselves and hurting their families and their loved ones, the people who mean the most to them.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why this conversation with you is so important. And I think for men listening, there's so many great men's facilitators. I know Kimberly, the way I met Kimberly was a shared men's mentor, Dan Doty, in
Mm-hmm.
the Ring of Fire mastermind. And that was my first men's group that I've ever participated in. And
Awesome.
it changed my life. And it came from me, Kimberly, at a time where I was in one of the biggest transitions of my life, moving from San Diego up to Bend, Oregon, when that all my community in San Diego, I left.
Yeah.
And so how things transpired, and Dan was always, he's been on my radar for about a year, and he was starting this new cohort. And
Mm-hmm.
I got plugged into a new community in a way that I'd never done before. And it was just as impactful as my community in San Diego, if not more. And so
Yeah.
I love that for people listening, the men's groups and the men's facilitators are so important.
Yeah, it is. And we also need to seek out people that don't just share our exact same thoughts and opinions on the world. We also need to surround ourselves with people that have differing viewpoints and perspectives, and people that can, that maybe even have a social status that is above us or below us in certain regards. Because, community is not about, everybody thinking the same way or doing the same things. It's really about being in an environment that also challenges and inspires you to open your mind, to critically think about things more, and also to feel more feelings because you're in different situations. And so I think it's important to seek out community that challenges us as well. And the sad kind of fact is, I have to look at the last time I read this study, but it's about like 1 in 4 men in the United States are expected to grow up in fatherless homes. And that means that there's a really sad misrepresentation of healthy masculinity for young boys that are growing up in a very ever changing world with so much technology at their fingertips. They can be escaping life from such a young age. and really then struggle, especially in their later years when they're wanting to reconnect socially with other men, with other women. And then they're at a huge deficit because they just didn't have the right role model. And so I think it's so important that, we're not all born in the same circumstances. And some of us are so fortunate to be born in great communities with, people around us that are very neighborly and very supportive. And those people, probably are going on to have much more successful, fulfilling lives and happier relationships. And then there are many of us that are, born into situations where it's really a fight from the beginning. And so the more that our elders in our community, the more we can be kind to the people around us, the more we learn to understand someone versus judging right at the get-go, the more we can just kind of make this little shift to, just change the way the world is going today, because you can see how divided we really are. And we're so angry at people that don't share our viewpoint. We're so upset when things aren't happening the way that we think they should happen. And we're missing like the fact that it's not all one way in life. And I'm going on a tangent here, but it's just, we need to have the right kinds of people around us, because you're very much the product of who you spend the most time with. So, check your surroundings, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What I really want to dig into, Kimberly, is, this great divide. It feels like there's so many, even friends of mine, there's so many men who are single and isolated and lonely. And it seems like
Mm-hmm.
it's getting worse.
Yep.
Okay, for my friends, my male friends who are single and lonely,
Mm-hmm.
what words, what advice do you have? I guess first off, unpacking why is it seem like such a greater divide that's getting larger and larger, and what can people start to do um, to be in a relationship if that's important to them to take that first step?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to speak to what's kind of, causing this rise in single, lonely men. And there was an article that was published last year that created quite a reaction to it. And I think what's really important to note is that gender roles are changing. Okay. And
Mm,
the different types of relationships that are out there have become, it's a long list of what you can choose from. So in particular, if you're a man over 40 and you're interested in I call it a traditional relationship now. So we need a label for men that want to be with women, that want to have a monogamous long-term relationship. I call it a traditional relationship. It's not open, it's not polyamorous, it's traditional. And, firstly, women have advanced so much. We're very highly educated. We are very capable in the workforce. We are entrepreneurs. We run households. We do everything that men used to do back in the day when
mm,
women just managed the home and men were the breadwinners and they were in fact in charge of the household. Now women fill that role very easily, and often sometimes even easier than men do, because we have certain characteristics that perhaps make us a little better at that at times. And so the big question is, what role do men play in relationships today? And I think that if you don't really understand how to be the kind of man that women today are looking for, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but they are often going to be put at a disadvantage, because women are not looking to men necessarily to be the breadwinners or to manage the household or to do traditional things that we would have considered in the past to be masculine. Women can now out earn men and buy their own homes. And so they're
mm,
looking to men for other qualities. They're looking to men for some of the softer qualities that they may not have worked on throughout their lives. So women are, yes, they want a man who's strong and capable and successful and can bring money into the household, because that often is associated with things like safety. But they're also looking for men that have an ability and willingness to communicate honestly, to be able to process and share their emotions within that relationship, that, have a level of assertiveness, that understand what they like and how to go after it, and who also know how to politely yet effectively stand up to a woman too. Because if
mm,
a woman is bringing money home and running the household, managing the finances, and a man is struggling in his job, but he also struggles a little emotionally, he doesn't have a whole lot of friends, he's not sure what his passions are, women aren't interested in that kind of man because they can be that version themselves. So I hope I'm explaining this correctly, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying here is that gender roles have changed, so therefore our expectations of relationships has changed. And if you're not learning to understand how to manage these new skills that are needed, unfortunately, many men are being left at the wayside.
Mm.
And that's one of the main reasons why there are so many single guys, and women seem to have less trouble finding a man
Yeah.
than men would say that they have finding a woman. So that's one of the main reasons why that's happening. Now, what can guys do about it? Well, it actually is similar to what we're talking about. How do you understand what role you want to play in a relationship? Well, first you got to actually have clarity on the type of relationship you want. I don't want any men over the age of 40 to go out there dating and not have a clear indication of what kind of relationship he wants and what is meaningful to him in that relationship. If you do not have that clarity, it is a recipe for disaster, because there are so many bloody options out there that you will probably have a struggle and be unsuccessful dating if you don't know what you are after. So you better have that figured out first. And secondly, also have to know how to develop some of these softer skills, such as empathy, validation, communication, the big dreaded V word, vulnerability, because women want to connect on a deeper level, because they're not just satisfied when you bring money home,
Mm.
right? Or put bread on the table. They want more from you. So those are some of the things that I
Beautiful.
would talk about.
I,
Yeah.
I love that. And my invitation is, especially for the men out there listening, to rewind that last 5 minutes, because what Kimberly just shared are really tangible, practical ways to start to move forward and create and step into that relationship and
Mm-hmm.
show up in a way that maybe you weren't showing up before. And I think it's
Yeah.
so important.
And I also say, like, hey, ladies out there, like, be a little kinder to men. Like, I'm also from that perspective too. Like, I don't believe women are entitled to absolutely everything and they can tread over any man in their life. It's also, be a little kinder to the men out there that are wanting to date. These guys have genuinely good hearts, and sometimes they just need to have an experience of a loving, compassionate female to also feel safe to flourish and be the best versions of themselves too. So,
Hmm.
ladies, like, give give these guys a break. Stop having this massive list of everything you're expecting from a man, yet, not even necessarily be able to provide that yourself. So I want to put that shout out there too, because I'm often sharing how men can be better versions of themselves. And that does not mean that I am not pushing women to also improve in so many areas so that we can both have successful relationships.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned that, Kimberly, because for me, I have the benefit of a very emotionally intelligent partner. My girlfriend, I think she's the
Mm-hmm.
most emotionally intelligent person I've ever met, and
Awesome.
she has done so much work on herself. And so over the last year, more than a year and a half, she allows me to show up in a way, and the relationship check-ins that we have every week, the conscious communications, and working through, not around, my
Mm-hmm.
emotional bag of shit, which, my attachment style is avoidant, and
Mm.
just understanding what my attachment style is and doing the work and understanding what her attachment style is.
Yeah.
I mean, just an understanding that in each other. But she has done so much work on herself, and she gives me space to, flounder at times and stumble and work through and screw up and make mistakes and apologize. And it's just really important that you mention that, as far as a woman's standpoint, on what they can do to support the men,
Yeah.
to so us men feel safe, so we can be vulnerable and practice those soft skills and develop those soft skills that you mentioned.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the stereotypes kind of exist for a reason. Like, women are, they say bitchy, but we really mean critical, and men are lazy and they don't listen. It's like those stereotypes exist for a reason, because these are the common things that women believe about men and men believe about women. But those things are occurring because the communication and connection between those two people isn't where it should be. And so a woman gets critical if she thinks her partner's not helping out or supporting her emotionally, and a man get lazy and don't want to do anything when they're not feeling supported by that woman in their life. And here we go, kind of self-fulfilling prophecy on these things that we say about each other.
And the positive impact, and for men out there listening, the positive impact of the simple things. When I help do the laundry, when I help clean up in the kitchen,
Yeah.
you know, it's the little things that she acknowledges when I do them. And it's
Mhm.
like, holy shit, man. Why didn't they teach this stuff in school?
Yeah.
Like the, like these are the things like relationships 101, like acknowledging her, every day and asking, how can I support you? And those little things throughout the day that she tells me are so important and make her feel so loved. It's just like, man, for so long, I'm just now learning these things, but it's those smaller things that really add up to
Mhm.
helping her feel seen, acknowledged, and supported in our relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the quickest, and remover of intimacy or passion in a relationship is one person feeling like they're pissed off or resentful of the other person because they're not having their needs met. And, that's a quick way to not having any intimacy or starting to emotionally withdraw from a relationship. But like in simplicity, everyone has a different love language. And what that means for those that haven't read Gary Chapman's Love Languages book is simply we all receive love in a different way. Okay. For one man, he might really need physical touch, and he's not necessarily means sex. He just means he wants to be touched, held, hugged by his partner. And if she's not very good at doing that, then he's not going to feel loved. And if a woman really likes acts of service or being helped around the house because she's doing a lot of household chores, and a man isn't, lifting weight in that department, well, she's not going to feel loved. And if she doesn't feel loved, she's not going to feel trusting of her partner. And if she's not feeling trusting, she doesn't want to get into bed with you. And so it's like, in a relationship, as unsexy as it sounds, you have to sit down and negotiate every little detail. Because if you want to live 40, 50 years with this person, you have to figure out how to operate almost as if you are a business. Now, I told you it sounds unsexy, but that's actually the most efficient way to then creating the sexiness that we all crave in a relationship. You better know how to support each other. You better know how to love each other. And you absolutely better know how to deal with difficulty and suffering, because that will inevitably pop up in your relationship. So if you don't have those skills, there's a little bit of learning one needs to do before they can have the relationship they are craving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things that my girlfriend and I do have been doing is a weekly relationship check-in,
Perfect.
and it's an opportunity just to share from each standpoint of what's working well in the relationship, what's not working well in the relationship, sharing that, and then
Mm-hmm.
the other person mirroring back and sharing exactly what I said, and she'll mirror back and repeat
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I said, and she'll ask, "Am I complete?" And then we'll switch, and we talk about
Perfect.
all the things, finances, intimacy, all the things. So no more than 7 days will pass before we at least talk and have that conversation. So we're not building resentments, and we're not having animosity for something that happens 2 months later. So I think it's
Yeah.
really important.
I 100% agree with you. It's like relationship check-ins are very essential for a relationship, whether they happen weekly or monthly or whenever you guys feel like it's appropriate for your relationship. It's important to discuss those little things and to continuously teach our partner how to love us. We don't know.
Mm.
We can't assume. One of the biggest self-limited beliefs we have, or misconceptions we have about relationships, is, my partner should know what I'm thinking. They should know what I need. And maybe we give these little subtle hints to help them pick that information up. And when they don't, we get mad at them. Well, whose fault is it that you're not communicating exactly what you need from a partner? And that goes into the
Mm.
second common and self limiting belief, which is, if I have to ask for it, it's less meaningful. Well, it's like, firstly, you got to remove these two beliefs, because if you have these beliefs, you're really going to struggle. And one of them basically enforces, I shouldn't be talking with my partner. And the other reinforces that they should know what I'm thinking all the time, which are two things that aren't happening, right? You got to
Mm.
constantly learn how to communicate effectively with your partner. And Effective communication is not easy. This is why almost every single person out there will say you need to have clear communication. It's like, well, what the F does that mean? It means you need to know what you need, how to ask for it, how to be diplomatic. You need to know empathy, compassion, validation, active listening. There's a lot that goes into effective communication.
Mm,
It is a master class in it of itself. And if you can work on improving communication just a little bit every month, you will increase the success of your relationship if you can learn how to communicate more honestly and also be the type of person that can receive communication back. It's not all about what you tell the other person, but also how you respond to what somebody is opening up and sharing with you. So, yeah, communication all the way.
absolutely.
Mm.
Um, one thing that you talk about a lot is being a self-led man.
Mhm.
And I love this because it's self-led men taking charge, taking responsibility for your life, make clear decisions, have a clear sense of your own values, priorities, and purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it goes back to some of the reasons why many men are finding that they're single nowadays is unfortunately many of us are relying on our partners to be the source of all our fulfillment. Esther Perel talks about this. I think she quotes like, where it once used to take a village to, raise a family, we now are relying on our significant other to be a source of all our validation, happiness, joy, adventure, success, intimacy, love, problem solving, you name it. And that's too much of a responsibility for any one person. So, what I mean by being a self led man is not that you don't rely on your partner. Absolutely, you rely on your partner. But you also need to know how to motivate, encourage, and move forward in your own life as if you were, you got to be happy being single or coupled. So it means you need to know where you're headed in life, the things that bring you joy. You have to be constantly learning, working towards things that challenge you and inspire you, because otherwise you're just referring to your significant other to bring all of this stuff into your life, and nobody can fulfill that role.
Hmm.
So, learn how to make yourself feel satisfied. And I won't even use the word happiness because we all have our thoughts on happiness and depression and sadness and anxiety and suffering, and that's something we all experience. So how do you make your life feel satisfying? It might be happy one day and unhappy another day, and that doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means you're having a human experience. But what brings you satisfaction in your life as a man? If you're listening and you ask yourself right now, what am I doing in my life right now that brings me a sense of satisfaction? And if you are umming and ahhing and you don't know the answer, that's something you need to work on before you even get out there and date. Because if you don't know what brings you satisfaction, you're going to hope to hell that the woman in your life is going to bring it to you. And I'll tell you right now, that's not our role. We're not very good at it. Okay. So think about that for yourself.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
So, this idea of effective communication being so important,
Mm-hmm.
integral part of all relationships. I want to take advantage because I know you're a neuro-linguistic practitioner,
Mm-hmm.
and language is very important.
Yeah.
And this is something I'm really exploring, Kimberly. In the rooms of recovery, my name is Andrew and I'm an alcoholic. My name is Andrew and I'm an addict. And so I don't I don't jive with that concept anymore because
Mm.
and I want you to explore this and unpack this with me because I know there's a lot of men who are sober who struggle with intimacy, and I'm just curious how much is the language that we use of saying I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict. How much does that impact our intimacy and relationships?
Well, when I hear someone say a statement like that, they're also reinforcing a belief they have about themselves. And I'm not an expert on the recovery process. I've not had any experience with things like AA myself, but what I'm hearing you say is the words we say, they have an impact on us. The things that we say not just out loud to the world and to other people, but the things we say to ourselves in our own mind have a very, very drastic impact on the outcomes we have in life. And there's a framework called CTFAR. It's an acronym. It stands for circumstances, thoughts, feelings, actions, and results. So think about it. We have something happen in our life. It's a circumstance. We can't control it. But what we can control is the thought we have. And these are the things that we are saying to ourselves. So I have a thought that I'm a failure. I'm a failure as a man. I'm unattractive. No woman will love me. Then guess what your feelings are going to be? They're going to be really shitty. They're going to be shame and fearful and avoidant and disengaged and detached. And as a result, the action you take will be to be upset with women you date, or maybe you won't date at all, or maybe you won't even challenge yourself to learn how to be better. And guess what results you'll get in life? The same ones you've been getting before. And so when we think about the things we say, it's not just the things we explicitly say out loud to our partner to communicate. It's also the communication we have with ourselves, which we're doing more than we are with other people. So you better have quality thoughts, not all the time, not after perfection. You better have quality thoughts about yourself if you want to have quality results.
Mm. So what I hear you saying is if people are saying and reinforcing my name is Andrew and I'm an alcoholic and addict, I'm reinforcing that belief. It's a limiting belief because it feels like there's something wrong with me every time I say it. Like and I think for so long, as I'm just unpacking this with you out loud, like, and how it showed up in my intimacy until 2 years ago when I made a drastic change and, embarked on my plant medicine journey, which is a whole nother, but that helped me become aware of a lot of the limiting beliefs, and that doesn't serve me anymore. So I don't say that anymore. And I'm just, for people listening, that becomes our reality if we keep saying it and reinforcing it.
100%. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are doing. If you listen to or read some of Pete Walker's work, he calls it the inner critic, or listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza or various other people that are, really into the mind and the brain and our consciousness, and what we say about ourselves becomes our reality. And if you look at the manifestation crew, the visualization crew, the law of attraction crew, they're all about saying statements about the realities you want to have happen in your life. So, up to 80% of the thoughts we have in a day are some of the same thoughts we had the day before, which means we're not really progressing in our lives in the way we want to. So when we change the quality of our thoughts, we change the way we talk about ourselves, the way we unpack our experiences without making it all our fault, without associating ourselves as a failure, as an unattractive man, as I'm too short, I'm too tall, I'm too fat, I'm too broke, I'm too whatever it is. That's what you're going to believe about yourself. And many of us have, a lifetime of reinforcement here to start changing and breaking. And so we also, have to manage our expectations on how quickly things change in our lives. But the quality of our thoughts, the things that we say to ourselves, those become our reality. So, one of the biggest things I work on with men that I am coaching that are looking for long-term relationships is, well, what do you say about yourself? How do you talk about yourself? What are you, how easy is it for you to roll off a list of your strengths versus how easy is it for you to roll off a list of what you believe are your perceived weaknesses? And everybody's very good at listing all their shit and feel very narcissistic or inflated to list the things that they're good at. And it's not egotistical. It's healthy narcissism. It exists on a scale, right? Too much of it, not good. Not enough of it, not good. Not good. To have no belief in oneself.
Yeah.
So you better believe you're a high value guy if you want to get a high value gal. Simple as that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Makes sense. One more area I really want to unpack with you that I think is so important, and it shows up with the work that I do with my own coaching clients. And I want you to really speak to it. And it's the idea of healthy emotional boundaries. Yeah. Why are they so important, Kimberly? And how can people take the first step to improve their personal boundaries?
Okay, so the first thing I think of when we talk about this is like one of the things that men are being really encouraged to do these days is be vulnerable. Okay, and I think that maybe coaches like myself or other people that talk about this a lot, maybe we haven't done a very good job explaining what that really means. Because what it doesn't mean is to just emotionally dump everything that's going on in your life onto someone else. What it means is over time to share your thoughts and opinions, your dreams, your aspirations, the things you struggle with. And that's something that we do slowly. And so, one of the things that sometimes we're not so good at is either holding back too much emotion or expressing way too much too quickly with people. And so we need this healthy sense of balance that makes sense for who we each are as an individual and the experiences we've all individually had. So, that's what first comes to mind for me.
Okay, beautiful. And so, can you give the audience a practical example? If a man is struggling with a lack of boundaries, I call it verbal diarrhea, like just way too much too soon. What's a step that he can take to become aware and to incorporate healthier boundaries, assuming he's in a traditional relationship with a woman?
Yeah. Okay. It's emotional bound. I mean, it's very different for everybody. Firstly, understand like maybe what your intention is on why you feel the need to share so much so quickly. Because sometimes we do it because we're testing the other person. We go, if I can reveal all this shit about myself and they still accept me, I can finally relax. And that's not that's not a particularly healthy strategy. So if you are a guy who has, too loose of boundaries with your emotions, then all you want to do is just be a little more mindful and slow things down. And maybe you even need a coach or an accountability partner to help you slow down, because maybe you're a little more wired on the anxious side of things. But for men that have too tight of emotional boundaries, i.e., keep everything to themselves, shove it all down, never process. Well, you guys also need to learn to slowly open up a little bit. And again, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a men's group, maybe it's a good friend that you kind of open up slowly with and realize that you can do that in a safe manner. Because, for each end of the spectrum here, you either need to slow it down a little bit or you need to draw it out a little more. And how you go about that is really it is accountability to each one of those things, but it's understanding what's too much and what's too little. And everybody is going to be difficult when it comes to that, because I coached a client recently and he goes, well, vulnerability is easy for me. And I went, oh, it is it? And he goes, yeah, it's easy for me. He's like, I can meet someone and I can laugh off all my insecurities and all the shit I've gone through in my life. And he's like, I could stand up in front of a crowd and just share all sorts of experiences that I've gone through in my life. And I went, okay, good for you. And I said, and how easy would it be for you to talk about something really deep and meaningful that you're looking forward to creating in your life? And he went, well, I don't know, not so good. I went, okay, so one part of vulnerability you can laugh at and it's easy for you, and you've got these same stories you tell over and over again and the same narrative about your life that you've become comfortable with that you can laugh off. Well, that's not really vulnerability. Vulnerability is like how easily can you get to know someone on a deep level and open up and trust them, and how clear are you on asserting your own thoughts and opinions about the world, even if it differs from someone else. And then a lot of guys will go, well, not very good. I'll just say things that make me get accepted by someone versus actually speak my truth. And so we all have to really assess where we are when it comes to our own emotional boundaries, because maybe there's avenues that you're actually really good at. And that's great. And keep doing that. But maybe you're really tight on some areas. And maybe you're just a little bit of an oversharer in other ones. So, for me, like it's almost like a full 2 sessions with a client to help understand where their boundaries are too loose or too weak, and then to formulate a plan on how they can slowly, safely start to change that.
Beautiful. Another 5 minutes. I highly recommend people rewind and listen to that part again. And I love, Kimberly, you're giving very practical advice for people, really simple language for men, especially to start to incorporate. So I really appreciate that.
Of course.
Last thing,
Mm-hmm.
in my relationship with my girlfriend, I have a coach. We have a therapist that we've incorporated that's been a game changer, an objective third party to help us. She has her own coach and her own work. I have my own coach and my own work, and then we come together and we have somebody to help us together. And I think it's so important to always have that in our life, somebody to help us see our limiting beliefs and our blind spots, to help us see new possibilities that we didn't think existed. And I really
Yeah.
want to encourage people listening to, at the end, we'll share your contact information, because I know you're excellent at what you do. So for people who want more of you, to please reach out to Kimberly. But is there somebody in your life, Kimberly, a coach, a mentor, who you can acknowledge, and what specifically did you learn from that person?
Yeah, well, learning has been a very long process, but more than one person for me. So in my relationship, my partner and I have had a counselor. I also get coached myself. So I think it's really important that when anyone looks to work with a coach, that they've also coached themselves,
Yeah.
because they need to know what it feels like to be on the other side. And so I've also worked with various coaches over the years, and I'm actually starting Dan Doty's new program as of tomorrow morning. So that's going to be very expansive for me. But I've learned a crap load from him, and I see that learning curve being quite exponential starting tomorrow in an area that I'm really scared to go into. But I also am just really lucky of being part of the coaching community. One of the friendships I made very early on when I started my business was with an individual who lives over on the island here. He's a really good friend of mine, and he has been a wonderful friend slash coach outlet for me, where I have been able to open up about certain things that I've been struggling with, and the perspectives that he has provided have been so instrumental for me. They have made me recognize, and maybe this is the most important lesson I've learned, he made me recognize that I'm not crazy, that I'm allowed to have certain feelings, and that I'm not alone in those feelings. And I think that a lot of men will resonate with what I'm saying, because when you're not connected to yourself, when you're not connected to other people, you start to feel like you're crazy, like you're alone, like you're the only one having these feelings. And so I really recommend and suggest that we find even one person in our life that we can feel safe with, so we recognize that we're not alone, because nobody here is alone if they don't want to be.
Mm. We're on video. I could feel your energy shift when you just
Mhm.
shared that. It was
Yeah, it
beautiful.
did. I'm glad you noticed that. Like I feel the goosebumps, because I know what it feels like to feel alone. I know what it feels like to feel like you're not worth someone's time. And that's not a truism. It's just something you're telling yourself. And so I encourage people to get support, because it's not a weakness, it's a strength. You become a much better version of yourself when you have people to support and lift you up. And we also don't need to have some crazy expectation that we need to have 30 people in our lives that are like that for us. If you've got one person like that, you are lucky duck. So focus on meaningful connections versus quantity of connections. That's been true for me anyways.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great way to end our time together. And like, what a great, I'm so thankful that you shared that, because I've felt alone, broken, and that pain and suffering is, I don't wish that upon anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
it just, hearing you share that as well, Kimberly, it just helps us connect to each other. And for people listening, like, oh my gosh, she understands, to see the
Mm-hmm.
similarities in our human beingness. I think it's so important. And
Yeah.
I'm just really grateful that you took the time with us today. And for people listening, how do they find you? Where do you want
Mm-hmm.
them to go to support you?
Yeah. Well, a bunch of fun different places. As much as I love to get into the heart of this content, I also have a very lighthearted and playful nature. So if you want to just kind of explore and learn more about me, I would head over to Instagram at Kimberly Nina Hill. I put out daily content where you get a sense of the things I talk about, the advice I give, and also just my personality. My website, KimberlyNinaHill.com. I'm starting a brand new YouTube channel in the next few weeks. I'm really excited. So for those that enjoy my content but want to go longer form on video, then you'll want to subscribe and stay tuned for what's to come there. I've got lots of great content that'll be coming out. I've got a podcast as well, the Self-Confidence Project, where I think 3 whatever years running now, I've been bringing on amazing guests and talking about great stuff. But the real kicker, if you don't just want to follow along and be part of the community and learn more, if you're actually wanting to get on a phone call with me, I'm a real human. I talk to everybody. And so the way I do that is through a complimentary consultation. It's really kind of aimed to be a dating strategy call to help you understand, what might be holding you back in having the success you want. Maybe it's some of the things we've talked about today. Maybe it's different for you. And we just go deep on a conversation for 45 minutes so we can get to know each other and see how I might be able to support you. And then we would also talk about a coaching relationship if it's a fit for that individual. So I welcome people to book that call. I got a few spaces for the summer. It tends to get pretty busy, but it's a great opportunity to just learn more about how coaching can be incredibly beneficial and supportive for you, especially if you're looking to build a connection with an amazing woman. That is what I'm here to help you do. So
beautiful. Well, Kimberly, thank you again. And I want to acknowledge you for all that you're doing in a time that we need it now more than ever. Thank you for all that you do for the men and supporting and empowering and being of service. So thank you for the time. Yeah. Well, and thank you for everybody for listening. We'll see you again next week. Have an awesome day.